Alright, I hit go live. Hopefully it's working. It says I'm live. We'll see what people say. We'll see what people say in the comments. Again, with YouTube live streams, you click live and it's not 100% sure exactly when you go live, whether it's exactly when you click the button or when it says you've gone live. But anyway, welcome to a Hardware Unboxed live stream. I love doing live streams. I'm glad to be back to be building some PCs with you guys. Hopefully everything is looking okay, sounding okay. Let me know in the comments if everything is working properly. And we'll go from there because we do have a couple of different camera angles that we've got for you. We've got the main camera, we've got some overhead camera, which we'll be doing some things with during the building process, and all that seems to be working at the moment. So yeah, hopefully all of that stuff ends up going okay. And yeah, we'll just wait for some people to keep joining the stream. This is a bit of a surprise stream for people. It's a Monday morning here in Australia. The weather's pretty mild, which is great for streaming. And yeah, I know a lot of you will be in other countries at the moment, probably on a nice Sunday evening to do some live streaming building. And yeah, we're going to be building a all AMD mid-range PC. I guess a lot of people who probably looked at the title and thumbnail were thinking, R5 7600, 7800 XT, there's got to be a gaming build, right? Got to be for gaming. However, this is actually a very specific PC that is going to really help out here at the studio. So for those of you who aren't aware, I'm sure hopefully a lot of you are aware, we have been recently doing podcasts, the Hardware Unboxed podcast. We've got a separate YouTube channel for it. We've got our Spotify feed, we've got our audio feeds, all that stuff. So Steve and I have been doing this podcast for a couple of months now, just talking about all the news, recaps of our reviews and things that we've been testing and other boring things that we do in our lives, considering about 99% of my life is just working on this YouTube channel. So we've got this podcast. And for a lot of the time, I've been trying to repurpose other systems that I've got around the studio for the podcast PC that we use for podcasting. So whether that's my B-roll system that I use for filming monitors on the channel, one of my gaming builds that I use for, say, testing games, testing DLSS versus FSR, those sort of things. I've got all these sorts of builds and none of them are very specifically built for podcasting, so I have to constantly move them around all the place. I'm taking my monitor rig, moving it over here for testing, moving it over there for using for podcasting. It's getting out of hand, so I thought I should build a dedicated podcast PC, and a mid-range build makes a lot of sense for podcasting because you don't need super high-end gear. You don't need an RTX 4090 for podcasting. You don't need a 7950X. You just need mid-range stuff. So we reached out to a couple of companies to get some stuff for this build. Gigabyte has helped us out a lot with this build, as well as AMD Team Group, and we've also got a height case over there, which I'm pretty keen on checking out. So we're going to be building this PC for podcasting in mind. There's a couple of parts here that are sort of more designed for that than for gaming. But if I did want to use this for gaming, if I wanted to just say to Steve, hey, I told you I was going to do a podcast today, but get stuffed. I'm going to be playing some games instead. I could use this PC for gaming as well. And part of the reason as well is that Steve doesn't really send me any hardware. So he's the hardware man. He gets all the cool, fancy new stuff. He's got thousands of graphics cards, probably. That could be an exaggeration. He's got all the CPUs. And I'm sitting here and I got all the monitors, which is not really helpful for building PCs all the time. So yes, we're going to be building some PCs here, and I see Steve's in the chat here as well, talking about with his Gaming Unboxed channel. So thanks, Stan, for keeping up the good work. We have got a couple of YouTuber merch things that we're using here. Obviously, we've got the Gamers Nexus mod mat, which this is my mod mat that I've actually got over in my work area, which I use for building things all the time. So there's a little bit of dust on it and stuff like that, because I do use this all the time. I really like it, and we'll be building as well with the LTT screwdriver. Now, when I got this screwdriver from LTT, I was like, seems like a pretty cool product. Would I buy it at the price? Not 100% sure. Honestly, since I've got it, I use this all the time. I think it's really good. So that is my endorsement of a thing that I didn't actually pay for. But if I didn't get it, I would have bought one because honestly, it's pretty good. So right, here we go. Let's talk about the build. Let's get into some of the hardware that we've got here. And we'll start with the most sensible part of all. We have got the Ryzen 5 7600. AMD did provide this, which is why if we look at the top, let me just change it over there, it does say that this is an AMD sample, not for resale. So they don't have to worry about that. This is going in a build that will actually be used. So yeah, oh, they didn't align the CPU properly. It's should be around that way. Anyway, Ryzen 5 7600. I think for a lot of people who are buying and building a mainstream to mid-range sort of gaming PC, and you wanted something that had longevity, you'd probably choose the Ryzen 5 7600. So I think it's a really good choice for people who were buying this sort of system, and that's because it's really powerful for games today. So it performs pretty similarly to your 8-core parts and things like that for games. It's not quite as fast as an X3D, but it is a lot cheaper. I think you can get it for around just over $200 US these days, which is a good deal. And then when you slot into an AM5 motherboard, you've got platform longevity, obviously. So if this thing isn't cutting it in a couple of years for the latest titles, you should be able to drop in a Zen 5 CPU, or hopefully, fingers crossed we get this, the generation after Zen 5, so Zen 6 or whatever, you'll be able to drop that in. So I think unless you're going with a really low spec build, like a very entry level, but you're trying to save every last dollar type of build, that's when you probably go AM4. For everything else, I think the Ryzen 5 7600 makes a lot of sense. So we'll be putting that CPU into, we've got the motherboard over here, which is Gigabyte's B650M Aorus Elite AX. Now, according to Steve, whose testing I trust very much, this is quite a good B650 motherboard. This is, of course, a micro ATX board, so it's going to be a little easier to work with in the system and case and things like that. And I really like the size of these boards, and I don't need all the features of an ATX board for this build, so I thought I'd go with something a bit smaller, and Gigabyte decided to provide one of their highest end boards. So I believe this is, I've got the price here actually, let's take a look. What was it going for just the other day? Oh, not too bad. I was thinking it was over $200, so that might have been its debut price. You can currently get it for $180 US. So this board has got some specific features that are going to be really handy for the podcasting aspect of this live stream. So let's take a look at the back of the box, and we'll go through some of those features that I think are going to be really handy. So the first one is that there are two 16 times, well, the second slot isn't actually wide for 16 times, but there's two full-length PCIe slots. The first one obviously is connected directly to the CPU, so that's your primary one for your GPU, and then the second one, I believe, goes through the chipset and is a PCIe, I think it says 4.0 times 4 slot. The reason why I need those two full-length slots and not a PCIe times 1 or times 4 is that I've got a capture card that I use, which will be going to this PC build, that uses PCIe 3.0 times 8. So fingers crossed that will work with this board, but a lot of boards, especially some of these M boards, B650M, will go with a really small PCIe slot there, so you can't fit the card in, which doesn't work super well. So I need to have the two slots, I need them to be spaced a reasonable part apart, so I can get the GPU in and get the capture card in, all while being super compact and nice. So that's thing number one. That should be really handy for this build. And then on top of that, it's got Wi-Fi 6E and 2.5 gig networking. So my previous build that I was using for podcasting, it didn't even have Wi-Fi built into the motherboard. So I had to use like this USB Wi-Fi card thing, which really didn't perform very well at all. It dropped out constantly, not great. The Wi-Fi 6E on built-in means I can move my podcasting setup anywhere in the studio and have that work. And obviously, I've got 10 gig networking in here as well. So if I need reliability, I can plug it in and use the 2.5 gig capabilities. And then obviously, you've got all the other features of the high-end board. PCIe 5.0, which is actually going to come in handy because we've got a PCIe 5.0 SSD to put in. And you've got your 12 plus 2-phase VRM, fully covered heat sinks and stuff like that. It performs well. So this board being $170, $180, with all those features, I think is reasonable. And yeah, Gigabyte's been making some pretty good quality AM5 motherboards, according to Steve. So yeah, we'll be putting that in the build in just a moment. Let's see what people have been saying. Some good stuff. Hopefully Steve is still watching and enjoying the stream and you're all getting into it. So here we go. Next part, let's talk about the AMD Radeon RX 7800 XT. This is the Gigabyte Gaming OC model for our all AMD gaming build. So obviously mid-range sort of card. You can debate whether this is mid-range, but unfortunately these days a $500 US GPU is mid-range, which I guess is probably a little disappointing from a few years ago. But these days, yeah, $500 is getting you sort of mid-tier performance. This card, the Gaming OC model specifically, this is a card that is available for $500 US. So it's not a premium AIB card. This is a very sensible choice if you were interested in the 7800 XT. Of course, we do have the, what is it, the 4070 Supers just come out as well. So ideally, these cards would come down by probably about $50 US to make them a really great buy in this sort of price tier. But for now, we organized this quite a while ago, so 7800 XT it is. Let's take a look at some of the features that this card has just on the box before we take everything out. So Obviously, we've got all the AMD GPU features. DisplayPort 2.1 as a display reviewer is always something that I find super interesting. We'll see how that goes. This is actually the UHBR 13.5 spec, so it's not full DisplayPort 2.1. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I think Gigabyte has got a 4K 240Hz OLED monitor, QD OLED, that's coming out with DisplayPort 2.1 connectivity, and that uses UHBR 20, which is the full 80 gigabits per second spec. These numbers are so bad and so annoying to remember. So we'll see how that's supported on a 7800 XT in the future with DisplayPort 2.1. Not sure how that'll go. Hopefully there's some fallback compatibility with that monitor. Anyway, we've got the WindForce cooling design, so 3 fans, 1 spins the other way. We've got the large copper plate, so covers the GPU and the VRAM. And also over here, Balin, our video editor, who's a big fan of RGB, will be very happy to know that you do get RGB LED lighting on this system. So will I or won't I turn the RGB off? I'm not sure. I usually try and turn as much RGB off as I can, but maybe for Balin, I will make sure that everything is working nicely. Maybe Balin's watching this at the moment because he's currently at home recovering from some medical stuff. So more stuff over here we've got from Team Group. 2 separate parts that we've got here that we'll look at. Probably overhead camera for this one, I reckon. So we've got here, this is another sensible thing that you would put into a mid-range build like this. We've got the T-Force Delta RGB DDR5 memory. We've got 32 gig of it at 6,000 speed. And you'll notice here on the box we've got, it comes in either white or black. This is the black design, which should look like this at the bottom here. Again with RGB there. So yeah, they've provided this. I think this goes for around $100 US on Newegg. So it's sort of, I believe it's CL38 memory, so it's not the most memory, timing sensitive type of memory. So you could spend a little bit more to get the sort of higher latency, well, not higher latency, you want lower latency, the better latency memory, which would be a little bit better if you were using this for gaming. But considering this isn't so much of a gaming build, then going for something that just has the capacity and speed that you need, I think that works reasonably well. And this SSD, they weren't actually planning on sending out this specific SSD. They had more of a mid-range thing in mind. They went to look, Team Group, they were like, hey, we're going to give you this SSD, let's look in our stock. Oh, we don't have any of them. So they sent out instead one of the highest end SSDs that they make, which I'm not sure if that fits super well with the build, but we're going to put it in anyway. This is the T-Force Z540 or Z540 for those of you in the US. Here in Australia, Z540. This is a PCI 5.0 SSD, probably one of the first PCI 5.0 SSDs I've ever used in a 2 terabyte capacity. So as you see here, you probably can't read the text because it's quite small, but it says PCI Gen 5x4, M.2 drive, of course. And the speeds on the back, it does say read speeds up to 12,400 megabytes per second and write speeds up to 11,800 megabytes per second. So I assume that that is probably a relatively brief workload. We'll see how that goes. This does not come with cooling. So as you'll see, it's quite a slim box. So only the SSD is included in here. And for Gen 5 SSDs, typically you do need some sort of cooling capability. So hopefully the motherboard, which has this this heat spreader here, will be sufficient for at least some sort of PCI 5.0 speeds in the build. So again, this is a high-end SSD that you'd probably use primarily for high-end builds. And I believe last time I looked, this goes for $270 US on various different retailers. So yeah, quite high-end. Obviously, SSD prices have come down a lot. So if you were getting something that was PCI 4.0 or even 3.0, you could save a bit of money there. But we are going to put in the PCI 5.0 drive, and that's why it's nice that the motherboard supports PCI 5.0. Right, Gigabyte also sent this out, which we'll get to, which is, this is apparently a brand new cooler. Let's get rid of this for a moment to talk about the Gigabyte Aorus Waterforce 2 360. This was announced in December and should be available very soon. I think you can currently get them in Australia. I think they haven't quite reached America just yet and other regions, but this is their new second generation Waterforce cooler. So they've done AIO before, but this is the new one, which comes with some new features. It is, of course, socket compatible with AM5, so it will actually fit into this build, hopefully. And then we've got, obviously, 3 ARGB fans and the circular sort of block that they're going to put on there. And if we have a look around on the back, this is the feature that I'm personally most excited about that will hopefully make this build a little bit easier, is the daisy chain quick connect fan. So when we were at Computex last year, we saw a lot of new products that were using this sort of daisy chain design, which I thought was really cool and good to make building these sorts of things much easier. So one of the things I find really annoying with cable management when you're using a 360mm AIO like this is that you have got all those wires going everywhere. You've got potentially the fan wires, you've got the RGB wires from the fans too, then you'll have wires coming from the cooler as well, the block. So again, it's a lot of wires, and as I'm not really an expert on cable management, and if you saw our build at the end of last year that Steve and I did, I like to just shove all the cables in at the back. Fewer cables, hopefully, with this build will mean that it works better. So yeah, the Waterforce 2 360. Again, if you're using this with a Ryzen 5 CPU, probably a bit of overkill for that sort of CPU, because this is only, I believe it's only a 65 watt CPU, and this is more designed for your super high-end builds. But you know what? It'll look cool. Hopefully it'll look cool. And again, for Balin here, RGB. So we'll turn that on for him, just for him. All right. Then we've got the power supply. All of these parts are in the description, by the way, if you wanted to check them out for whatever reason, you want to get familiar with what the parts are. We have got a gigabyte power supply, which they assure me will not blow up, which is good. And I did check reviews. So according to reviews, this is a power supply that works. So fingers crossed that works nicely for us. It's the Gigabyte UD850GM, 80 plus gold certified, fully modular design. And then on the back, we've got all the cables that we need for this build, obviously. It doesn't have a 12 volt high power connector, but it's not required for this because our 7800 XT just uses your standard PCIe builds. Then we've got all the other stuff, SATA, your floppy stuff. Not that we're going to use that, so we'll just not include that cable, 2 CPU pins and all that sort of thing. So we will put that to the side for later in the build. So that's what we're going to be using. Oh, and also we've got a height Y60 case. I've got the little instruction manual here because I didn't want to bring it over just yet. So I asked Balin, again, our video editor, I'm like, what case should I use? I want a cool case for this build. What's the best looking case? Because he does a lot of case B-roll and stuff and looks at all these sorts of things. He likes the cool looking builds. He was like, get a Height Y60. So I reached out to Height. They sent one of these over. I believe Height is the case making subsidiary of iBuyPower. So they do a lot of system integrator type builds. And the case, which sort of looks like this, again, let's make it so you can actually see, it's got this sort of all window design that goes right around the edges, which should hopefully look cool. It's got some fans at the bottom that direct cool air through to the top like this. It comes with a riser cable as well, which we won't be able to use for this build because I need the PCI slot. But yeah, hopefully it'll look cool. So there we go. Those are all the parts that we are using. So again, we just reached out to these various companies. We're like, hey, we're building this build. Provide us some stuff. Let's see what we can go. And yeah, we'll go on that. So yes, so in terms of like, is this build balanced? I've seen some people saying it is balanced. Some people saying it isn't balanced. If I was personally building this build, if I was going for, if I was choosing all the parts individually, I think I would go with the main components, things like the motherboard, the GPU, the CPU, the memory, all that stuff I think makes a lot of sense. Power supply as well probably makes sense. I think the things that probably a little overkill, as I mentioned, is sort of like the PCI 5.0 SSD. You really don't need PCI 5.0 for this sort of system. That's more for your sort of high-end production sort of systems where you really need this super high SSD performance. I'm sure it performs well, and again, probably the cooler as well. This doesn't come with a box cooler, at least it doesn't look like it. You're definitely not fitting a box cooler in there. So it does need cooling. The 360mm is more sort of an aesthetic thing, right? I think if you're going with a lot of AM5 CPUs, you don't necessarily need a 360mm radiator, but it potentially will look cool in the build. So a lot of people do build things that, not just super practical, but also to look cool, and especially the case that Height Y60 is a cool looking case. When Balin showed it to me, I'm like, definitely want to be using that. I think it's like $190 US. So again, more mid-range, you might go with something a little cheaper. But I think all of this stuff works, should work quite well. So again, throughout the build process, if you do have any questions that either myself or Steve, who's hopefully still in the chat, can ask all that stuff about, we'll be answering some things. If you want to ask monitor questions, because I do a lot of monitor testing, then feel free to send those through as well. We'll get to answering some of those things. And so, yeah, so for people wondering about this build, this is not a sponsored build. So this is not something that, we're being paid to do or anything like that. This is purely because we actually do need to build a system. And we thought we'll make a build on the channel that's got all the parts that we need. However, all the parts were provided by the various companies. So Gigabyte provided all the Gigabyte stuff, Team Group provided their stuff, AMD provided the CPU, Hype provided the case. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on here. So we've got the motherboard here, nice and weighty, which is good. I need to put aside the Wi-Fi little thingo because I will need that, and I like using the ones that they come in with. So let's see, is there anything else that we need from this box before we continue? Let's look for any of the pretty basic sort of inclusion here. I usually like to take out the M.2 screw just in case the exact slot that we're using doesn't have one. So I'll put that aside. And then, yeah, pretty much not much else to go on there. So we'll put the board to the side for the moment, or at least the box. 1440p or 4K IPS for this build. Keep changing my mind. Because I'm using it for podcasting as opposed to gaming, I think I'd probably prefer to use a 4K monitor for this, just because for productivity work, I find 4K to be of benefit. I think, though, for gaming, I would still choose 1440p for this type of build, simply because 7800 XT is a really well-suited card for gaming. So I think if we were using it for gaming type workloads, then 1440p, you can typically buy like a higher refresh rate monitor at the same price. So if you're looking at 4K, you might be getting like a 4K 144 Hz. If you're going 1440p, you can get 240 Hz for the same price, which again, for some people is kind of like 240 Hz, 144 Hz. Does it make a huge difference? For a lot of people, probably not. But I think bang for buck wise, you're still probably getting the best value from 1440p today. And these days you can actually go even cheaper on 1440p. So we'll take out our AMD sample not for resale CPU, which they have, I think they've taped it in here or something, which is a little unusual. But we will, maybe they've just taped shut the little thingo. Yeah, I think they've just taped shut the thing. So that shouldn't be too bad. We'll just try. So yeah, if you're wondering about the case and things like that, you'll be able to check the links in the description below. I believe the total price for this system is around $1,700 US from memory. I think I've got the pricing over here in little notes. Let me just check. So yeah, I think it was about $1,700 US-ish, which again, I think you could get it down to around $1,500 or less with using a more reasonable SSD, cooler, and case. You'll probably be able to get another $300-ish off from that price. So that's probably around where we're going to be looking for this build. So yeah, again, you can check all the links in the prices below and things like that. Someone says, how badly am I bottlenecked with the 7800X3D and 3080? Probably not at all in most games. So yeah, 7800X3D is obviously a very powerful CPU. And yeah, $1,700, $1,500 is sort of mid-range these days, unfortunately. So yeah, PC gaming has gotten a lot more expensive. And then again, as well, some of the things with PC gaming these days, it's kind of, the expectations and things have adjusted, because if we're talking about mid-range, sort of the mid-price of the market, people are making more and more expensive things for people who are using this as sort of a high-end expensive hobby. So people who have the thousands and thousands of dollars to spend, they're sort of looking at, building PCs for $4,000, $5,000. Companies are making more and more parts to service those people. Things like high-end coolers, high-end motherboards. You can get your super high-end cases that cost like $500 US. So yeah, as PC gaming becomes more accessible and has a more broad appeal to lots and lots of different people, the exact middle ends up shifting up. But I think I personally would probably prefer mid-range to be more around the $1,000 US that a lot of people are talking about. But honestly, if you go and try and spec out like a $500 entry-level PC these days, unfortunately, you're just not getting that much, which I think is sort of indicative of, I guess, where things have gone in the last couple of years. Things are getting more expensive. $500 is a lot harder to justify. So yeah, I think we've talked about in some podcasts lately about things like, should you just get a console for gaming if you only have about $500 US to spend? Because typically you'd be just looking at like an APU type build and things like that. So yeah, hopefully over time we start seeing future generations that have got a bit more going for it in sort of the mid-range and those sorts of things. So yeah, hopefully at some point we'll get that. But unfortunately at the moment, yeah, building a mid-range PC that's got sort of your high performance 1440p sort of capabilities, then yeah, you'd be getting, you have to spend a little bit. But as people have said in the chat, you know, you could realistically, I think, do a build that's quite similar to this, that's got the main components like your 7800 XT, which is $500 US, the CPU, which is only $200 US. So you're looking at $700 for the two main components, $100 on RAMs, up to $800. You get a decent quality motherboard for around $125 if you want to save a bit more money. Add a couple parts in, and yeah, you probably would be able to get it down a bit more than what we're sort of showing here. But again, we're just using what has been sent over. Now, with all these motherboards, of course, we're going to chuck them into the A2 and B2 slot because it is listed as using it first. So that's typically the slots that are a bit further away, so we'll chuck those in to those slots there. This goes in the other way. Make sure that's all in, all looking good. Nice click, everything's going well. And we'll chuck in the SSD next because I think that makes the most sense. So yeah, it's interesting doing some polls on the Hardware Unboxed channel lately about things like, you know, the reputation of GeForce, the GeForce brand, the Radeon brand. How's that going? How have people seen that? You know, have they improved the brand? Has the brand gotten weaker over time? And it's interesting to see the sentiment from a lot of people commenting on the GeForce poll about, you know, people thinking that NVIDIA has weakened the GeForce brand this generation. And I think a lot of that has, just judging by the comments that people were talking about, was all about things like pricing and value of parts. And I think that's been the big sentiment across all of this year when we've been talking about mid-range builds, is that, you know, the $500 price category that we're sort of using here for GPU, there's been a lot of competition. We've got the 7800 XT, there's been the 4070, which has been, I think, one of NVIDIA's better mid-range GPUs. We've got the new 4070 Super as well, all in that price range, which is all well and good. They all perform well, but then you start going to like your $400, your $300 GPU price points, and they've really just sort of neglected those for far too long. And I think that's been a sentiment that people have been talking about in a lot of these, on a lot of those places and things like that. So yeah, with this SSD here, they've given you the T4 sticker separately. So I am going to apply the sticker because it does act as sort of a heat spreader. So, well, at least that's what the theory says. So we're just going to apply that. Hopefully it's going to spread it a little better. They're supposed to be thermally transparent to produce all the heat through it. So we'll see how that goes. It looks like this motherboard has got some sort of these quick connect thingos here. So you just flip them up and you sort of put the SSD in, and it should go out well there. So it looks like the M.2A for the CPU is probably the slot that we want to use. We're just going to put that in there, flip the thing down. Hey, that was super easy installation. I quite like that from Gigabyte. Props to that. It's good to see. I've used the MSI ones as well, that you sort of flick these things around. So yeah, I think that's quite a nice implementation of that with the flick up as opposed to the swivel around that I've seen from MSI. Now we need to take off the heat, the little protector there for the top SSD, and then we'll just slot this back over. If I can get it aligned into the screws there, that's looking nice. And yeah, we'll just screw it back in. So yeah, toolless M.2, love it. Love it. And I think the previous build I did by myself, there was this weird toolless design that was on the board that I was using, and wasn't a huge fan of that one. But on this particular board, that was a super painless process, so I enjoyed that very much. So we've got the motherboard prepared, which is nice. So that will go straight into the case in just a moment. Now, because it's toolless fans, I probably don't need to put together the cooler just yet, but we'll take a look inside just so that I've got an idea of what we're using here and what we need to go with. So let's take a look. Hello, Tim. Please say hello. Yes, hello. How you all doing? Monday morning here for us here in Australia. It's just turned 11:30 a.m. that is. So nice to get up, do some PC building. I've actually been doing a reasonable amount of PC building lately. So here we've got the quick connect fans. So no cables on those, which is very nice. If we take a look at one of these fans, hopefully this isn't too out of focus because of the focus depth. If we take a look, they've got their connectors that look sort of like this. So I believe with these Gigabyte fans, you sort of slot them in like this and they all connect together sort of like that. You'll see here, that's the other connector on this side. So yeah, it's got this like slot in design. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how that goes in just a moment. Got all of our mounting hardware to mount it. So that will be very important to use. Got here our radiator, nice circular block, so that's all nice. We'll put that to the side. And then the all-important cable. So I believe this should greatly simplify the cable process, just having to use this one cable. So yeah, that should be all nice to use, hopefully. So let's see, what have they included here? They have included some thermal paste, so that's nice. If we have a look at the package contents, so they've got an AMD mounting bracket, so we should just be able to, I believe with this sort of thing, we unscrew the sort of whatever you call the plastic mounting things in, you put in the standoff screws, you chuck it in using the mounting bracket, put on the thumb screw, screw everything together, and that should work really nicely. And then we've got, yeah, fan cable, we've got some ARGB extension cables apparently in here as well, which should be nice. I've never seen this before, never taken it out of the box, so we'll give that a go in just a moment. And then, yeah, Intel platforms that we're not using do need the back plate, but we should be okay, so that's good. That's nice. Let's get the case up and we'll start chucking everything in. Okay, let's see what people are saying. This is essentially the PC I built for my friend back at the 7800 XT launch. So yeah, that should be nice. Things like that. Do you ever go to AliExpress shopping for monitors review? Because I think it would be funny. Yeah, I mean, AliExpress, they do have a lot of sometimes the Chinese brands that people ask for. I think Red Magic, people have been asking for like the 5088 zone what is it, monitor that they've got there. So yeah, sometimes I do look on there for places like that. Okay, let's get up. Should probably change the camera, shouldn't I? Let's get this. Let's around the other way. Let's turn it around the front. So this is the Height Y60 in black. Just try to take all of this plastic off without hitting all the cameras and stuff that are centimeters above this. Okay, so that is the height case. As you can see, it's got this glass all around sort of design that's reflecting around right around here. So this nice open window thing. Now we just need to find what we need from the inside, and then we should be able to get building. So yes, this is a Balin recommendation. He was like, you should get this case because it looks awesome. So I trust his recommendations. This is our B-roll man. And yeah, so this is sort of designed for quite versatile building. So some of the parts and stuff that we're putting into this sort of thing, you know, doesn't necessarily, you know, it's not going to fit all this, you know, it's not going to use all the space in the build. But one of the key things that this comes with is sort of this, you might not quite be able to see it, but it comes with this built-in riser cable. So you can put your 3-slot GPU right at the front here, which is why it's so wide this way, is so that you can have your motherboard, you can use half height PCI cards behind it, and then you can have your 3-slot GPU that's sort of vertically mounted at the front here, which again looks pretty cool if you're using it for B-roll. I think it's got some fans at the bottom as well here, along here, which you use for intake through the case. And then yeah, it's got a lot of space for cooling at the back and things like that, so you can put radiators at the top, on the sides, all around the place. It's got some storage compartments and things at the back. And then as well, because it's sort of short, the PSU is sort of mounted vertically like that, which I think is kind of interesting. So yeah, lots of things going here. We just need to figure out how to take all this stuff apart. So we've got the, let me put this screw back in. Oh no, it's not a screw that goes like that. All right, back panel off. Let's put that over here. Let's take out the all-important box of bits and bobs that we've got out the back here, which is included in one of the storage mounts. So we'll turn around this case from the back in just a moment, and we'll show you as well why these sort of cases are becoming more and more popular. Is that the motherboard slots in roughly here, and so you've got a lot of space around the back that can be used for cable management. So you've got all this space here. It's quite thick. So all the cables that you would be using from your PSU and all those things that are being routed through to the front can just be blobbed around in here, and you don't have that tiny thin little, you know, some of those things are so thin for all the cables. This is quite wide and spacious at the back here. They've got some SSD mounts here, so you can mount your various different drives at the back up the top here. The power supply goes down here. And then, yeah, it should just be quite easy access for various different things. Along the top as well, I believe that there's some parts that come out that can be used to install the radiator along the top and various things like that. So, yeah, it's sort of designed to make it easy for people. So, yeah, that's the back. And then we'll just try, we'll see if I can get that unscrewed with that. Let's get this going. Cool, we'll just put those aside. Those are important screws. And then this should just come off like that. I won't do a Steve, I'll peel the plastic afterwards. So yeah, now you should have a bit better view of the PCI riser cable assembly that they've got in here. So we won't be using, as I said, won't be using that because of the need to use both full height PCI slots on the motherboard. And so, you know what? I'm going to take out the cooler tray as well first and set up the cooler first. I think that makes a bit more sense than getting the motherboard in there first. So with this case, there should be some way to remove, there's like a little thingo in here. So let's take a look at the old instructions. Let's see what it says. Yeah, okay, so you should just be able to take it off like that. All good. I'm an engineer, so I always read the instructions. At least I went to engineering school and never became an engineer. But anyway, you get trained to use the instructions. But so with this build, along the top here, there's this sort of inset tray that you can use to put in the 360mm cooler. So we can assemble that whole thing outside the case. And yeah. So once you've got that unscrewed, this part comes out, I believe. Oh, I missed a couple of screws there. Thanks, Rosen. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. Just want to thank you guys for helping pick all the basic components for my PC build. Also, Balin. Hi, Tim. I'm your biggest fan. Yep. Thank you, Balin, for some of the recommendations for these parts and things like that. So, yeah. So basically, now I've taken out this part, so you can install your radiator in here first, and then you just slot it in at the end, at the top, which I think is kind of nice. So we'll get that sorted out first. Right. So it goes in like this. So we'll take a look using the overhead. So this is the piece here. And the idea is, once we get our cooler out like this, is that you slot this in like this. So that goes in like that. You see it's nice and flush with the top here, so it's the right sort of height. And then when we fold it around the other side, the nice cooling cables come just out the end here, so that will slot through into the top of the case with no obstructions. and then we slot in the fans along the bottom of the case, or along the bottom of this. So we'd have the fans sort of like this, along the bottom side, and then that whole thing can just slot in and be installed in the top, which I think is kind of a nice feature. So the first thing that we have to figure out is how to slot the fans together to chuck it onto the AIO. I like to keep the plastic on that right till the end, just to prevent things from hitting various different things. So we just need to make sure this is nicely aligned. So I think it goes something around there. We need, let's take out our bag of bits and bobs. So let's see what we've got. Looks like quite a healthy number of screws, so that's good. We won't need those just yet, or that. And one of these is the AM4. Let's check it. Yeah, it looks like it's that one. So we won't need those. Let's chuck those over to the side. Chuck that there. Ooh, thermal paste, we'll need that. So yeah, with these fans, I believe you just have to peel off this protective thing. See how that goes. Don't want to damage it. So yeah, that exposes the connectors. So we'll do that on all three of the fans. As you can see, I'm just peeling that off so that we can see. Yeah, the cooler is the worst part of any build. Hate doing it. I kind of agree. It depends on the cooler that you get. I think air coolers can be a little easier to work with, depending on the size of them, of course. And it also depends a lot on like the cooler mounting hardware. Like some coolers just have really bizarre ways to mount them onto the motherboard. I like that a lot of coolers these days are sort of, actually, yeah, up here, they are using either the default standoffs or they're using just the ones that, you know, they don't require you to turn over the motherboard, take this off, put a different thing on. They're all mounted quite sensibly, which I think is a really nice way of going about things. So I believe there's also, this looks like there's some sort of protective film on these as well. So hopefully I don't peel off the whole sticker trying to do this. Let's see if we can get it. Oh, yep. Oh, got it. Got it. I'll do that first so if I don't forget, because otherwise people in the comments will be getting stuck into me for forgetting to remove the plastic film. This is actually quite a challenge to get it in just the right spot. I don't have long enough fingernails to do this, to be fair. We'll leave that one for now. Okay, so we've got two Aorus fans. Well, we've got one that says Aorus, and we've got two that have got the sort of logos like that. So I reckon I'll try install it in this order. And we want it to be used as an exhaust fan. So thinking about that being rotated upwards, the air will be flowing through this way. We want the fans to be installed like this. So we've got the nice logos down, exhausting upwards. And so we should just be able to, if I've got these around the right way, that should go around like this. We should just be able to slot this in like this and sort of put it through, clicked in. Sounds like it's locked, so we've got one in. We'll chuck this in, goes around this way. So slot that in like this, chuck it in, should all be connected and ready to go. So no wires on that. All we would need now is to use this singular cable, theoretically. So yeah, one of these cables you just slot onto sort of the end, depending on which end that you want. So we'll just have a look here. Now thinking about the case, do I want the cables coming around sort of more towards the back of the motherboard, which would be installing it here, or do I want to rotate it around and have it coming around the front? I think just looking at the design of it, I actually have to think about this, right? Because this is going to be installed like that. And so that would have the cable coming around. The cable would be facing up the front if I did it that way, which would look a bit weird. So this is towards the front of the case when it's installed. So I think I'd want to rotate this around like this install the cable like this, so then the cables can come around the, that should be the back, or is that the front? I'm getting confused here because of the orientation. Right, so it should go like this. The cable thing should go in, yeah, so it should go in like that. It should have the cables come around the back. Yeah, that makes sense. That should have been the way. So, we've got the orientation going. We've got some cables here for some other things. Just make sure that we've got everything aligned, and then we should be able to screw everything in. All right. And we will chuck this in like that. So we will need to use the long screws that it comes with. So these ones, that should go all the way through into there. Yep. That's looking okay. So yeah, what else has been going on, guys? Because I'm going to need to screw in quite a few of these screws. Make sure we get everything aligned down this way. It's going nicely in. When I get 2 of the screws in, the rest of them should be properly aligned, theoretically. Okay, yeah, I thought that wasn't quite aligned. Let's get that in. Right. Alright, probably need to undo this one a little bit so that we get it right in the right whole area. Okay, yeah, I think that's a little better. Okay, let's get that one in. Going well. So yeah, stuff that's coming up on the channel. If anyone's interested, in the next couple of days you will see some more GPU reviews, which you might be guessing exactly what those reviews are about, but they are coming up very shortly for some upcoming products. So there's actually quite a few upcoming reviews that you'll see throughout January. I think there's in total 4 reviews that we've got that are currently being tested by our good man Steve, that are currently, we can't really talk too much about, but you will be seeing these reviews going live on the channel throughout the next couple of days, and then some more of them will be coming out next week. So yeah, if you're very interested to see things like more RTX Super Series GPU reviews, there's some stuff from AMD as well coming. All those reviews you should be seeing very soon on the channel. So yeah, quite an exciting month really for a lot of product releases and things like that. Whether or not the products are exciting is questionable, because we have seen some mixed feelings on things like the Super Series. Even though we personally thought the RTX 4070 Super was reasonably good, seems like the reception from other people has been a bit more mixed in terms of, sales, in terms of, how much interest there's been from people. I think there's just a lot of GPU fatigue and things like that at the moment. A lot of people just waiting for a next full generation where hopefully some of the lower tier parts will become a lot more attractive. Because I think really a lot of the cards that have been coming out, especially from NVIDIA, have more been satisfying the higher end buyers, where a lot of people have just been crying out for your $300, your $400 parts to become really good, instead of being a 4060 Ti with just 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Do you see any 32-inch 240Hz IPS gaming monitors coming out soon, or will it just be OLED for now? I'm looking for a mixed usage monitor. So I think you can get 32-inch 240Hz IPS at a 1440p resolution at the moment. So that's certainly possible. I believe there's quite a few different vendors that are offering that. As for 4K, I think it's a lot less common. In fact, I'm not sure there's any, because I think a lot of the 32-inch IPS ones that are 4K are your 144, 160 Hz type monitors. And the one that we did get at 32-inch was a curved VA from Samsung. So hopefully, I mean, you can check the panel roadmaps at TFT Central. I think a lot of what we'll be seeing this year are sort of more the OLED type discussions. So a lot more OLED stuff, a lot more 4K 240Hz OLEDs, which are very exciting. I've actually got one over there, the MSI one that you would have seen on Monitors Unboxed. So a lot of that stuff will be coming. But 4K IPS, I'm not sure. I know there's going to be some more mini LED versions, so things that have your high zone count dimming for LCDs and things like that. There's going to be a lot more of those. The question is, will they push up to 240Hz? I'm not sure. I think there are some panels in the works that are doing that. But I couldn't tell you 100% for sure, as I just knocked the table there a little. I couldn't tell you 100% for sure that they were or weren't coming. So you might have to just either go for a lower refresh rate option for now at 4K, go for 1440p, or hopefully wait. But I think the OLEDs, you know, for mixed usage, I'm planning on burning one in. So hopefully once it comes to when we're getting the final production models of some of those 4K OLEDs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because I currently use a 32-inch, I think I've accidentally put that on something. Oh no, it's just a cable. Never mind, all good. So yeah, basically one of the ideas that I had is that I want to take the 4K IPS that I'm currently using for my workstation, my primary screen, which is just a 4K IPS 144Hz monitor. I'm going to swap it out for an OLED. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to use it in the exact same way. So I'm not going to do special taskbar dimming. I'm not going to run in dark mode. I'm going to use it exactly how I would use it for an IPS LCD. And I'm going to see how that goes. I want to see how long it takes to burn in using it 12, 14 hours a day for productivity work. So there's going to be very minimal gaming in that OLED setup. It's going to be purely used for productivity. And I'm going to see. I'm just going to give it an experiment. I'm going to potentially destroy a $1,000+ US monitor. I'm going to just give it a go. And as someone asked in the chat, no, I do not use dark mode. I'm a light mode user. That's because my office is typically lighter. So it's a bit easier to read text if it is white on, if it is black on white instead of white on black. So yeah, I'm just in the process at the moment of removing the riser cable because, as I mentioned, that is not compatible with this particular build in the way that I'm doing it. So we need to free up that space a little bit. So yeah, destroying the monitor in the name of science. Yeah, that's pretty much the idea. I think it's finally time to sort of assess whether OLED can actually be used for productivity in that way. Like how many months of usage am I going to get from a very expensive monitor using it at 200 nits in white mode with no software side dimming capabilities. I guess there's a few more screws that I have to take out. This maybe wasn't the way to have done this, but we'll see about that. Let's see whether it, what does it say in the old instructaroos? Okay. Yeah, it's more designed for people to just use it as is, right? Seems to be that way. All right, we'll give it a try. We'll see what we can do here in terms of, seems like it's got this metal plate. Oh, that's 2 layers. I couldn't see it in the light. There's actually 2 layers there. Right, that makes a lot more sense. I thought it was weaved into the case. I thought these cables like weaved under the case. You probably actually can't see it here. I thought this was like weaved under, but there's actually just this small metal bracket here. It's being a bit camouflaged. Okay. So we just need to get that screw out. How is the GPU going in? Aren't there only half-height slots? Oh, that is actually a very good point. That is actually a very good point. Someone has just mentioned about the half-height slot thing. Yeah, I guess I will have to use this riser cable. That's a great point. Come to think of it, my capture card actually is half-height. I just don't have a half-height bracket for it. So I should be able to slot that in behind it. I'm actually using the capture card for this stream right now. So yes, we will have to use this. That's interesting. It's going to look better, I'll tell you that much. It will definitely look better with the riser being used. Okay, so let's see. We just need to install the M80X ones of these. So we'll get a few of those from the height box. Well, I may as well put these screws back in as well. Good spot from people in the chat. I wasn't paying any attention to the fact that the GPU actually wouldn't go in at all if I had done it in the way that I was intending to do it. So at least that saved me some time from trying to get that far in, figure out it wasn't going to work like that, and then have to re-put it in. Awesome. All right. Back in. Didn't get too far. Nice. All right, let's see if we've got any additional... Not sure they've given us any, but we'll certainly find out in a moment. So the capture card is half height. It is a half height card, but I don't have a half height bracket for it. So I think I'll have to go get a half height bracket for it. But I was going to install that later anyway, so that's not too much of an issue. Okay, looks like we don't have any additional standoffs. So I'll use the standoff. Does this LTT thing come with a standoff replacing screw? Nope. So we'll use the iFixit toolkit, and we'll use, I think it's this one. Is that the size? It looks like the size. Could be this one. Yeah, no, it's that size. All right. Just change over some of these standoffs. Okay. So, let's see exactly which ones we're going to need. We're going to need the one that's directly below there. So we're going to need this one. Chuck that in there. I like the iFixit toolkit because it's got things you can use for the standoffs, because sometimes they're really well screwed in from the factory. So having the ability to just use this tool that one's quite tough, this one. Getting there, got it. Nice. All right, we'll just chuck that into the second one here. So I believe we can just leave that one there because it's not going to be used at all. I believe that should be the correct layout. So yeah, let's just try slot this in under the... Okay, it seems like I've got everything right. Okay, that will slot in there. And then yeah, I can use the, I should be able to slot in the second thing just there once I get the half height bracket, which I'm sure I've put the half height bracket somewhere. I just need to go find it, and that should slot in for this system. All right, so let's just screw in the motherboard. It's looking nice. The nice black aesthetic is matching the case quite well. All right, let's get out the little screws. How are you looking forward to Zen 5 CPU releases for desktop? If so, do you think price performance will come back with AMD? It's one of those things where it depends. I know we say it depends on the channel a lot. I think with Zen 5, if they do end up having the highest performing parts, that you're not going to see those being especially compelling value, because they're going to try and make them, you know, they're trying to get profits and things like that off them. They're going to try and make them as expensive as possible to get the most sales. So if they do have the performance crown, especially for things like gaming parts, the highest performing productivity processor and those sort of things, I think that's what you'll see, is that you will see, expensiveness come back. But hopefully what will happen is that when these CPUs come out that are offering the fastest performance and things like that, that the previous generation Zen 4 processors will get cheaper. So hopefully something like an R5 7600, that this CPU will get a lot cheaper and more affordable for people, so that you have that option, like we saw through a lot of the AM4 generation, where people had the option to either use, you could buy the latest stuff and it would cost you a bit more of a premium to get the more higher performing parts, or you could slot in an older processor, like in the Zen 3 era, you could slot in a Zen 2 CPU, and those used to be available for around, $150, $120 for some of those parts. So hopefully, the next generation of the 7600, the next 8-core Zen 5 CPU, that debuts around the $200 mark that we see the 7600 at, and then the 7600 can become a $150 part. So I think that will hopefully bring a bit more value back to the AM5 platform, because throughout the first generation, obviously it's going to be mostly early adopters, people that want the performance, people that are thinking of building brand new PCs. But a lot of people on AM4 have not had that incentive to go and do the full platform upgrade just yet. So hopefully there will be some more compelling additions for people who will be able to use it for a variety of different tasks, and be able to get great value for it. Okay, let's get this in here. It's going to be a little difficult for me to see that top screw over there. I'm assuming there is one. I'll just give it a rotate, I reckon. And one more screw. Yeah, big hurt on AM5 was the DDR5 pricing. Yeah, I think that's been the case. DDR5 is much more affordable now. So I think it'll... it's come down in price a lot already. I think the pricing of DDR4 is kind of a little hard to justify at times. The DDR4 versus DDR5 barrel is pretty similar these days. I think it just depends on the exact kits that you're looking at. There's some kits that have been a lot more out of stock than other parts. So yeah, so may as well slot in this riser cable while we're at it. So I think just chuck it in like that. And then, where was that screw that I took out of here? Here it is. How far in advance do you plan your videos? This is a good question. It really depends on the video. There are some things that are sort of, we sort of look at what's going on in the current market. Like, what's the news that are going on? What are sort of people talking about? Is there a new game that's come out that needs to be benchmarked? So a lot of those videos will sort of try and just jump on as soon as possible and then get to... just producing that video straight away, basically. For things like builds, it can take months to organize things like this, where we need to coordinate a bunch of different parts. We need to make sure things are compatible with the build that we're talking about. So yeah, a lot of that goes into building systems. So yeah, we do a lot of that. So as I said, build's probably one of the longer things that it takes to plan. Things like you would have seen Steve and I build systems on the channel last year. That probably would have taken a couple months to plan. And then when it comes to, Steve's big benchmark videos, I know that he has to spend a couple of weeks just doing the performance testing. So if we wanted to produce a video, it's going to take at least a couple of weeks to do the testing. And then if we need hardware to put in that video, we then need to coordinate that. So it could be a couple more weeks to get the hardware in and coordinate it and things like that. So yeah, that's how it sort of comes down to sort of the planning side of things. So monitor reviews, we sort of plan those a couple of weeks in advance. We sort of need to go through the testing to production and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm always slotting in videos usually 1 to 2 weeks in advance, just sort of thinking about, hey, in 2 weeks I want to have that video ready. In 3 weeks I want to have this video ready. And then maybe in a month from now I want to start thinking about doing this next video and planning to have all the parts ready and everything ready to go. So yeah, that's kind of how I approach it. There's always a lot of planning. I think in the early days of Hardware Unboxed, where we did more videos, there was even a way of saying it, kind of less planning, because we were just making so many more videos. There was a lot of like 1-day videos, just wake up, oh, what do you want to make today? Let's look at Reddit. What's Reddit talking about? Let's make a video on that. I think there was a lot more of that going on. Whereas these days, when we're doing fewer videos, there's a little bit more planning and organization that goes into it. There's a little bit more, I wouldn't say thought, because we've always put thought into the videos, but there's more time that goes into each video. And with more time, there needs to be more planning, organization, making sure things get made. And even today, since we hired Balin as our video editor, a lot of my monitor videos, for example, have been edited by him, which has really improved the quality of the videos. So hopefully you guys have noticed that there's a few more interesting graphics going on, a few more explainers and arrows being used and things like that. And I'm just trying to find the AM4 risers, which I believe are these ones. Let me just double check. So yeah, with Balin editing some of the videos, AM5 standoff screws black. I guess there's two different colors here. They look quite similar. There's like slightly darker ones. Anyway, yeah, with Balin editing videos, I kind of need to send him the video at least a couple of days in advance. So that part of it has to be planned as well. It's interesting that they've got different screws for AM4 and AM5. So I'll show you the difference right here. Even though they're supposed to be cooler compatible, both of them, they've got this silvery one here, that's the AM4 screw, and there's this darker black one, which is the AM5 screw. And it's very slightly, I don't know if you can see that super well on camera, there's a very, very slight height difference between the two screws. The AM5 screw from the base where it would screw into the motherboard is slightly taller. So I guess Gigabyte, when they were designing this cooler, figured out that the AM5 design is just slightly different and needs some slight optimizations. But yeah, it is very, very slightly taller. We're talking like a couple of millimeters difference between those two standoffs, which is interesting. If you're one of the people that likes to know about the differences between things, why things are designed the way that they're designed. So yeah, we'll just try to screw these in the whole way. We'll get the quality in. Yeah, the quality is great on both this and Lawrence Unboxed channel. I guess the planning and editing helps a lot. Yeah, I mean, we're always very busy, so there's a lot of stuff that's going on, and some videos we allocate a lot more time to than other videos. So Steve's big benchmark videos is sort of one example of him taking a lot of time to produce those videos. It's kind of funny, we've got comments over the years of things like, I think it was around the time when Steve did a big benchmark video comparing an AMD versus NVIDIA GPU, and then like a day later or a couple of days later, I published the FSR versus DLSS video. So I think it was something like Steve had come to the conclusion that one of the AMD GPU in that particular comparison was better than the NVIDIA GPU, and then I came out with the DLSS video where I sort of said DLSS was better than FSR, and there was a lot of very silly comments on Reddit talking about how like I had made, because of all the negative comments around Steve's video, that I just whipped up this FSR versus DLSS video in the space of a day so that, you know, we could appear more balanced on the channel or whatever, ignoring the fact that Steve's video, I think, took a couple of weeks to make. The DLSS versus FSR video took it was like a month to capture all the footage, I think. Not a month full time. It was sort of like a month in between doing other things in other parts of the project. So yeah, it was sort of very funny to see that reaction from people on Reddit sort of saying, we could just whip up a video like that within a day. It absolutely isn't the case. It does take genuinely a long time to make some of those videos. But yeah, some of the other videos, like news videos, for example, take a lot longer. Take a lot shorter, sorry. So yeah. Can the PC gaming market survive long term with decent video cards costing $750? No, I don't think so. I think that a lot of the manufacturers at the moment are sort of ignoring the fact that game consoles do exist. So they're always going to have to compete with, you know, PCs do a lot more things than consoles. They're a lot more versatile. They can do so many more things. People use them as dual use systems for gaming and other things. However, for a lot of people that are just deciding about gaming, the PC isn't the only platform for gaming. You can go and buy a console for $400, $500 US and get a whole gaming system that can play the latest games, can do it in quite decent quality. The PS5 and Xbox Series X are quite impressive consoles, so it can do all of these things. So people are always going to be tossing up, especially new people into gaming, what should I be spending my money on? Should I be spending it on PC gaming or should I be spending it on a console? And for a lot of people, if things aren't affordable, then they're going to be just choosing a console. So I think for a lot of people, if if we can't get PC gaming back to a position where it's genuinely very affordable, then there's going to be... Have I got this around the right way? No, it goes around the other way. If we can't get PC gaming back to the position where people are building really good quality systems for not that much more than a console, then there's going to be a lot of trouble for these people, because, and by people I mean the companies that are investing in PC gaming, because yeah, gamers are going to be choosing the systems that make the most sense for them. And yeah, we're all enthusiasts here. We love building PCs. There's a lot of charm and appeal to doing the building process. It's a lot of fun. It's interesting. You learn a lot. So, you know, from that perspective, there's a lot of reason to still go with, what do we got here? We'll use these screws. There's still a lot of reason to go with a PC, but there's casuals as well, right? There's people who, they want a really good quality gaming solution, and they don't want to be spending $1,500. They don't want to be spending $2,000 for these sorts of systems. So yeah, gaming, I don't think PC gaming is sustainable if the only options for people are really expensive GPUs to get the performance that they need. And that's why, you know, there's so much stagnation with cards that are $200, $300. Those used to be really good value segments. Now they're not good value segments. And I think both AMD and NVIDIA have made some degree of misstep with this generation, where I don't think that they have gotten the sales that they ideally would have liked. Now, I don't have inside information to know that for sure. That's just a guess. But, you know, what we've seen from the Super Series being more of a correction of what things should have been, and a lot of cards adjusting in price, things not selling out quickly. They're still being, you know, even today, how much supply is there of RX 6000 series GPUs? There's still a ton of those models available on shelves, and that wouldn't be the case if there was really affordable, good quality $400 GPUs coming out at the moment. I know some people are saying apples and oranges, consoles are only fit for gaming and other forms of content consumption. PCs are for work and gaming. Yeah, I mean, that is factored into the price, and I think people would be willing to spend $1,000 or $1,500 US to get that dual use case, because it is a more capable system. But there are a lot of people who are using these systems primarily for gaming, and they may instead go with a PS5 for their gaming needs and then some other system for work, whether that's a laptop or something else. So yeah, it's not ideal that the prices are what they are. Now, I am going to remove the warning, remove before installation. It's funny seeing people that don't do that, and they wonder why their temperatures are so weird. Okay, so we got some thermal paste. Let's apply that. Oh, should we censor it? No, we won't censor it. I'll show you what I've been doing for the last couple of AM5 builds. I've sort of been going for this divided by symbol, which I think works quite well. So it's like, oh, it's still dripping. So there's my horrible thermal paste application. Could have been better, I'll give you that, or could have been better, but it's in there. So we want this to be installed like this. But before we do that, I should probably put on the mounting bracket. So we'll just install the mounting bracket, which goes in like this. Does it lock in or anything? I feel like it should be locking in. Does it go around the other way? There we go. Nice click. Tells us it's working correctly. And then we'll be able to get it in sort of like this, I think, in the end. Something along these lines. Just chuck it on there. Seems to be working quite nicely. And we'll just screw these on. So, an AIO for a 7600. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. You don't really need an AIO for a 7600, but I'm building this a little bit for Balin because he loves his RGB. he recommended this case because he loves the design of the case, and I thought, you know what? It makes a lot of sense to use an AIO just for the bling factor, to make it look cool. People say now rub the thermal paste around. Yeah, if I wanted to get it all over my fingers and stuff, I'd potentially rub it around. Okay, so this one's being a little bit tricky, so I'll just try and... This is the right thread, it's just I haven't got it quite the right angle. Alright, 0 RGB here. Yeah, I think that's typically how I build systems, is that I usually go with the 0 RGB design. But Balin loves his RGB. That can't be going in right. Let's see if I swap this with one of these other ones. Does this one go in nicely? Don't see why there's any reason why it wouldn't. Yeah, maybe it's just a tough one. That's weird. Is the threading the same? It looks the same. Or is it the same? I swear I used all the same ones. Yeah, I did. I used all the same ones. It definitely looks different. Maybe I didn't put it around the right way, which would be terrible. Alright, let's demount this and see what's going on with this. I'm not sure if there's a difference. I'm just seeing if there's a difference in the threading with this. Okay, I think this... No, it looks the same. Looks the same. Yeah, it definitely looks the same, so I'm not sure why that wasn't. Alright, well, we'll give it another try. Shall I reapply the thermal paste? Didn't get great contact on it, to be fair, but I hadn't screwed it in the whole way, so that makes sense a little bit. I will just get a cloth and we'll redo the thermal paste. Probably could have just let it, but you know, like doing things perfectly. So I just okay, make sure I throw that away so I don't touch it. Okay. So yeah, I don't know why that didn't work the first time. We'll give it a try a second time. Nice and gloopy. God, get off there. God, oh my God. That did not go well. Hang on. Alright, got it. Made a mess of that one, but that's alright. Thermal paste cap, so I get it everywhere. And yeah, so if you join the stream halfway through, why am I building this mid-range PC? This is for podcasting on the Hardware Unboxed podcast. I reached out to some companies like Gigabyte, AMD, and Team Group Height, the case that we're building in. I was like, we've got this new Hardware Unboxed podcast. I need a dedicated PC to be used for the podcast because the podcast, because I was using a PC that was just being used for all sorts of different things, for B-roll, for monitor testing. I didn't have enough PCs. So a dedicated podcast PC will just, yeah, as we were talking about earlier with how far in advance do we plan videos and things like that, just streamline the process of going in and using, just being able to set up, just go straight in, do some podcasting with Steve, make the podcast, make it all nice and fun. All right, that was a lot easier to get in that time, so not 100% sure what happened there. Anyway, whatever. Take off the sticker. Now, it's supposed to be rotatable, so we'll have a look. I think that looks pretty much the right way up. So that should be okay. All right, what do we got here? We've got an RGB cable and a fan cable. So we'll route those around through to the back. I've just realized that I probably should have installed this cable first. This is the fan cable that goes to the fans on the AIO. So I probably should have installed that before trying to put it in here, but we'll see if I can get it in without taking it out. I do use the division pattern. That's my usual pattern for those sort of CPUs. Hi Tim, can you please test the Corsair Xenon OLED monitor after the brightness update? So the reason why I haven't tested that, otherwise I normally would test it, is that Corsair asked for the monitor back. So I don't have the monitor anymore. They sent out that particular monitor to review. Yeah, there's absolutely no way I'm getting this cable in without taking that out. All right, so Corsair asked for the monitor back. So that was before they'd released that firmware update. So as always with monitors, I sent it back and I don't have it anymore. So that's basically the reason. Otherwise I would test it, because we've tested the brightness updates of a lot of the other monitors, and I do, especially for more popular monitors, things that people are interested in, I'd like to try keep up to date with all the testing, have the reviews nice and up to date and things like that. So yeah, they asked for it back. Don't have it. That's sort of the challenge that companies have when they ask for things back, is that if it does need further testing, then it becomes a lot more challenging to do that if I don't actually have the product in at the time. All right, so let's move this across a bit. I'm just going to try. All right, it's going to take a little bit. Got it in, just shove it in. Looks like we've got good connection on all the things, and now I've actually got the cable in. So that's better. So we should just be able to route that down in there, I reckon, and around. So that'll be nice. Now we'll just screw this back on, and we should be good to go for the next steps. Don't forget the EPS cable while you're at it. Oh, that's a good. Let me see how much finger room. Nah, I've got enough. I've got enough finger room, I think, in there to get it in there. Yeah, it might be a bit difficult to route the cable through. That's a good point. I will do that first. Just the cable, though. That's what she said. Yep, nice. Tim, Cooler Master GP27U or Acer XV275KP3. I think the XV275KP3 is the better monitor. It's not great. It has some difficulties with switching between HDR and SDR from memory, and the Cooler Master monitor, after the update that allows you to use HDR and VRR at the same time, it does flicker a little bit. So you kind of... Maybe I shouldn't talk while I'm dealing with this bag. So you're kind of tossing up between those two things. You're kind of tossing up between, I would personally choose the Acer model because I'm not a huge fan of flickering. So that's what I would personally go with. But for, let's just find the EPS cable. I think it's this one. Have they labeled these cables? I think Gigabyte should probably label the cables in their power supplies. Because I think I am pretty confident that the one with 2 connectors is the GPU cable and the one with 1 is the CPU connector, but they do look pretty similar. So I think that they probably should label it just to make it a bit clearer for people, but that's all right. So yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm not a huge fan of flickering. So that's why I would personally choose. So yeah, I would personally choose the Acer model of those two monitors. So let's just wrap this around nicely. I should actually go that way. For clean cable management, we'll chuck it in through like that. And that can be routed down into there like that. So I think that's worked out nicely. All right. Next up, we'll chuck this back in. Make sure we got those. Yep, it's all looking good. Getting it in, getting it done. Two more screws, we shove this back in. Nvidia's going to start asking for a damn GPU subscription fee soon. Oh, don't give them any ideas. That would be shocking. But they're probably thinking stuff like that, aren't they? These companies, they love their subscription model stuff. Alright, now I'm thinking if I mount the GPU in first, because I have to do it vertically like this, it's going to block all these connectors. So I'd be better off cable managing it all first, putting the power supply in, then putting the GPU in last. So we'll move off this camera for now. And I will chuck in the power supply. So it's one of these vertically mounted power supply setups. So for this build, let me see what sort of cables I'm going to need. Definitely going to need at least one 6-pin connector. Let's take a look at the GPU. Quick start guides and so on. Two 8-pins. That's probably what I would have thought. Two 8-pins. So we'll chuck in two of those. We'll chuck in the motherboard. I reckon we might need a SATA. Does it need a SATA? Potentially it doesn't require a SATA, but I'll put a SATA power in just in case. It doesn't look like the case has any SATA requirements. The cooler doesn't. So I could probably get away without SATA, but I'll put one in just in case for any additional things that might get added in later. All right. Tim, am I in Queensland? No, I am in Victoria at the moment. So all going fine down here in Victoria. Take off the power supply sticker that's blocking the modular ports. And let's get installing. So, chuck in this got PCIe. Let's chuck these up here. Take the SATA one. Right, got another one in. So yeah, Steve's been a little bit sick lately, so we haven't been doing the podcast. If you've been catching up with our podcast, Steve's been a little bit unwell, so we haven't done it for the last couple of weeks. So hopefully he's feeling a little bit better today. Getting back into doing some testing because I know he's got some big videos to be finishing up in the next couple of days. So hopefully he's doing all right. All right, so the PSU should be pretty easy to install in this case because it's so open out the back here. So I should just be able to chuck it right in. Make sure the fan points outwards. Solid on that little ledge. And get the power supply screws. So yeah, despite the riser cable situation, this case has actually been really easy to work with so far. Everything has been pretty easy to install. There's lots and lots of room, which is nice. It's good when you get a case that, and I know this is a thicker case this way than a lot of normal cases. It is nice to get a case that both gives you this aesthetic design, theoretically. We'll see how it looks when it's finished, but theoretically, aesthetic design. So it's nice to get a case that provides that, but also has so much room around the back here to be used for various different bits of cable management. I really shouldn't have to do all that much cable management to get this to look okay. So we'll chuck this through here. This is our CPU motherboard power cable. We've got the dual 8 pins. Now I'm using both cables because I personally prefer to use both cables instead of trying to double up the power over just the one cable. It's a bit of an overkill thing. If you wanted a more clean build, you would probably go with just the one cable, but I think going with the two is a little better, so we'll get those through. There's fans installed along the bottom here if you weren't aware, so there's direct cooling intake through the bottom here, and I believe there's just various different channels and stuff, ability to get the air through from the bottom and also from the sides through these fans, which then push air up, and then it should get exhausted through our AIO at the top, so that should work out nicely. What else do we need to put in? The SATA power, we don't really need that just yet, so I'll chuck that around here. All right, now we'll try put through. Need to find out where the USB connectors are. So we've got the USB-C one there, and we've got the other USB, appears to be just there. Okay, so I'll chuck this one through here. I think that'll go nicely into there. Cable management won't look the best there. Is there another? Is there any other ones, second ones? No, it doesn't look like it. Well, we'll just leave it there. We'll chuck in the other connector, the USB-C. Front panel, which I assume means front panel USB. Or are those the front panel connectors? Okay, no, there's just the front panel connectors. So that should go through here somewhere, and then audio is usually down here. So I'll chuck that down over there. Next we've got a couple of different fans. Those are the built-in fans. This is the pump fan, so that should be routed back out that way. We'll put in the cooler fan back out through this way. Cooler RGB, we'll try to figure out where that goes, and then we've got 3 additional fan connectors that will hopefully go somewhere. And yeah, we'll try put all that stuff in. So where are our fan connectors? Let me just take a look. Got fan 4, 3, 2, we've got 2 down the bottom by the looks of things, maybe even 3 down the bottom, 1 up the side here. This fan pump is there, CPU fan at the top, so I should be able to route all 3 of these cables down the bottom, just judging by that. So I'll chuck 2 of them through here. I'll chuck 1 of them through this other port over here. So I think that's the majority. RGB, we'll try to figure that out as well. Where's the RGB connector on this? RGB, looks like it's down the bottom as well. Alright, so we'll put that through there. So yeah, it's not as tall of a case as you might expect. It's definitely a wide case, wider than a lot of other cases. But as far as the other aspects to the case in terms of height, not that high, not that tall of a case. So make sure I'm not resting on screws or anything I've got around the place. Cool. All right, should be able to do some overhead cable management now. So we'll chuck this in for our motherboard power. Nice. I'll chuck in, that's RGB for that, so I'll chuck in this into CPU fan. Why not? Hopefully that's also pump suitable. Should be. We'll try to tuck that cable in down there. We'll see how disappointed Balin is in my cable management skills, because I'm not the most fussy person when it comes to cable management. So it looks like we've got an LED port over here, which we should be able to use for this. So that should give us RGB for the pump. We'll chuck in USB into this one, USB-C. It's good that they haven't put that port right on the edge, because often with the cable bends, if it's like really needs to be bent around, those cables are quite annoying. They don't, a lot of these USB internal connectors, they just don't clip in super well. There's often a lot of like, they just pop out easily. They're not the best connector. If I'm going to be totally honest, not the best connector. Could have designed it a little bit better. So we've got the front panel. So this should be our front panel power and stuff connectors, I'm guessing. Not for power, sorry, reset switch, etc. So what have they got on this one? Power, reset, something like that. F panel. It looks like a USB connector to me. It must be USB, surely. Yeah, it definitely looks like a USB connector. But then it's got the thing in the wrong way. So it's definitely not. Interesting one. We'll leave that for a moment. Where's our HD audio? It's down over here. So I'll chuck that into the audio port just there. We've got fan RGB. Balin will kill me if I do not plug that one in. So we'll definitely plug it in. Plug it in just there. Got 3 additional We should have 3 additional fans, unless I've lost one of the cables somewhere. I might have. Is this one of them? Yep. Okay, so fan. Put that fan in this one. And we'll chuck this other one in under here. Just route some of these back through so it looks a bit nicer. RGB cable's always a little dodgy. So it's looking okay. And now all we've got to do is figure out about this front connector sort of thing. See what else it's come with. Anything else that's interesting? Not really. So yeah, I'm going to guess that this goes in like this. The cables are added to the top, so I reckon it goes in like that, into there. Just a guess though, we'll see how that goes. So, I reckon we've got all the cables in. This cable design here doesn't look the nicest with the way that I've done. Definitely doesn't look the nicest with the way that I've done it there. But then the RGB connector's down the bottom, so it's kind of hard to route it through without the cable looking like that. If there was another RGB connector at the top, I probably would have used it, but the cable for the CPU block is short, so it kind of had to be up the top here, and the other option was down the bottom. So yeah, I guess it just has to be sort of looking a little dodgy like that, but whatever. We'll go with that. Let's get this thing back upright so I can install the GPU a bit more easily. So it's only a double slot GPU, so we'll chuck these out. Alright, what's people been saying? Well, I've been doing some cable management, which is always the most fun part of any build, putting in the cables. We're not too far away from testing this and making sure that it works. Always be fun questions if it doesn't end up working. So let's see what this GPU's got. Everything seems to be out and in working order. Remove before use. Sure. Remove that. It's quite hard to do this when you can't see properly. I think I've got it. Yeah, that should be. Okay, so let's screw it back in. And then we'll chuck this one into here. Okay, that's looking okay. Oh, what's this connector for? Oh, this is the fan for the... I should probably chuck that in somewhere, shouldn't I? We'll chuck this through here. There's just enough fan connectors on this motherboard, I think. I think I needed all... I think I needed 5 of them, and I've got 5 of them. So that's worked out nicely. Cable management on the back's looking very easy. Just the old shove everything in there. These front panel connectors, to be fair, probably should have been routed. There's like a hole here that I probably should have routed the front panel connectors through. But anyway. Alright, let's get these connectors in. Okay, and I think they need to be around this way. Get that in there. Right, so we can pull it through at the back just to tighten it up and neaten it up a little bit. Shove it in. Shove this cable back a little bit as well. Pull that back, make it look a bit nicer. Make sure all those cables I didn't route through that hole are fine. Make sure that's in there. The only downside is really this RGB cable that's here. That could have been a little better, but just the length and yeah, making sure that's all in there. Okay, so it should be built. Should be. Let's make sure the rear panel can go on. Rear panel's on, so that looks okay. Okay, probably time to see whether this will work, which is always an interesting question. Have I built the PC correctly? Let's chuck on this top panel. So, I'll just put this aside for a moment and I'll clean up a few things so that we can get a monitor out and we can see whether it's going to work. But for now, I'm going to... Where's the button to do a poll? Down here, start a poll. Okay, here we go. Will the PC post for the first time? All right, here we go. So we'll see. Will it work? Do you think that I have built it properly, or have I not built it properly? You'll be able to provide your feedback here. And yeah, we'll just move some of these things out the way. Well, 80% of people think I've built it properly, so that's nice. I guess it depends if the BIOS is working, but it should be. Don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. That over there. Put some PSU cables back. These are all the cooler related bits and bobs, so we'll keep those together. Chuck that over there. Get rid of some of this rubbish and things. This goes. 81% of people think that it's going to work the first time. So I'll take that. I'll take that. People seem to be relatively confident in my PC building skills. To be fair, I built a few, so it should work. But yeah, we'll see how it all goes. Get this out the way. Shouldn't need that anymore. Get all these random screws that I didn't put back in. More random screws. What are these from? These long ones. Hopefully that wasn't from something important. Okay. Don't want to go losing any of these screws. Right. Should be okay to bring this back up now. Put it over here. Get this box out of the way. We'll see. We'll power it on. We'll see how we go. make sure that we can see what's going on. I always have monitors ready to go. Got any spare monitors? Yeah. I think I have about, at the moment in here, about 40. It always gets out of hand. I always get sent too many, and I'm just left with way too many of them. So I think I'm using about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm using 8 of them over there, and then the other 30 of them will be in boxes somewhere. Obviously this one as well. So I'll just plug in some DisplayPort cables. This has got DisplayPort, yeah. There we go. Alright, let's make sure everything's turned on. This is on. The power button, which I think is down here. Okay. Well, it certainly is on. No, we're doing some memory training at the moment, and then it should be booting through, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Getting something. Getting something. All right, let me see what it actually says. Oh, I need to reset the FTPM. Okay. Which means I probably need to find a keyboard. Hang on. Definitely booted. Definitely booted though, but that's good. Now all you people in the poll can change your prediction. I'll just get a keyboard and we can mess around in here. Let me see if this wireless keyboard works. So what do I need to do? Press Y to reset FTPM. Is that going to work? Oh, something worked. I think it did something. So should the GPU fans move? Not necessarily. Some GPUs will just power the fans all the way down if it doesn't require the additional fans. So what does it say here? BIOS has been reset. Okay. We'll get our DRAM working with the correct Expo profiles. If this thing has Expo, can't remember if it does. So yeah, we'll see what's going on there. Who voted no? Yeah, well, that's probably fair. Will Expo work? Yeah, that's probably the next question. Again, I don't know at the moment what it's actually doing, but I assume it's doing something. So I'll just give it a bit more, otherwise we'll just try reset it back into the BIOS again. Yeah, most modern GPU fans won't spin under load, but you might be able to disable the 0 dB mode. Is there any advantage by placing the GPU vertical instead of horizontal? Not really. Obviously for visuals, it kind of looks better in the case to have it oriented this way than oriented this way. A lot of people were saying earlier about how I was using a micro ATX board in this case when it does support full ATX. Well, you can't even really see that I've used a micro ATX board now that I've mounted the GPU vertically, because you can't see that the motherboard doesn't actually extend all the way down to the bottom of the case. So it gives it a better visual design. As for like cooling performance and stuff, it probably doesn't make a huge difference. Obviously there's going to be, it's quite closed off glass here, so airflow will have to come around into the fans that way, but that shouldn't make too much of a difference compared to vertical. I don't think that should be a hugely deciding factor on on that sort of thing. This case also has bottom airflow, so I can actually feel it right now that there's stuff coming through the middle there. You do get no GPU sag, which is probably the main factor that people would have if they're using a very heavy GPU, and this case can support your triple slot GPUs. So if you're getting a lot of GPU sag, then mounting it vertically can improve things there. So yeah, with we'll try reset this. Does this have a reset button? Let me have a look. No, just power. So yeah, that's really the reason you'd use it vertically. We have seen some times where, I think Steve was testing a GPU where it was an Asus GPU where if you mounted it vertically, horizontally, the normal way, the cooler sagged away from the GPU die, which decreased performance and temperatures. Whereas mounting it vertically, for a lot of people that tested it vertically, they weren't having that issue. So, but then you have the compatibility issues of PCI riser cables. So you need a really good riser cable to get it to be working in that sort of direction. But yeah, so we will... Now it's quite difficult for me to see this, so I'll just turn it around like this. Expo, DDR5, let's get that working. Expo 1. Okay, we'll save that and exit. Yes, we're also not getting... Oh, we're getting RGB. Yeah, we're getting RGB on those top fans, that's nice, that's worked out. We're getting RGB there. So it's just... You can see the RGB in there if I tilt it. RGB fans at the top. So really you don't need an AIO Ryzen 5 7600, but yeah, you can get the nice sort of aesthetic design there. And on this case, you can put more fans down there in the back as well. So if you really want to bling it out with additional fans, RGB fans down that side section will probably improve the visuals as well. And then yeah, your front mounted GPU that's vertically mounted looks kind of cool. RIP that one fan, you're right. Oh, yeah, it's stuck on a cable actually. The EPS cable there was just a little too... Yeah, you can hear it, that right there. Just need to bend that cable a little bit more. Very tight clearance on that. Should be okay now. Cool, so Expo's working. Ryzen 5 7600 is detected properly, 32 gigs detected. PCIe seems to be working. M.2 detected, installed, so that's all good signs. That's all good signs. Later we will go and probably shouldn't be prodding around the case while it's on. That's probably not recommended. But anyway, later we'll install Windows on this. We'll get this working as my podcasting PC, and I think that will have worked out really nicely. It's nice that the fans have stopped there as well. I guess the final thing will be removing the protective plastic. Get rid of that. Just see if this only got plastic on the one side. Looks like it's just one-sided plastic. So that's looking nice. Better to take it off once in place. Yeah, I agree, taking off the plastic once it's in place is probably the better way of doing it, but this is a live stream. Oh, they've left on this sticker underneath the plastic. Come on, guys. Should probably put that on top of the plastic so it comes off nicely. Oh well, there we go. Looking nice. Good peeling time. The box of the Y60 actually, I think it says on it, if you can see there, 3-piece panoramic glass with 3 times more satisfying plastic wrap removal. So it actually says that on the box. of the case. So they know what's what. They know that people like their super satisfying peeling experience. So yeah, I think this case looks really good. So Balin did a great job of recommending this particular case in terms of its looks, and I like that it's not super tall, which will allow it to fit nicely under my podcasting desk, which has those electric height adjustable leg thingos, whatever you call it. It's like you can turn to a standing desk and stuff. So at its lowest low, this should fit under there nicely. I think it looks nice with its vertical mounted GPU in there. I think that looks really good. And the only question mark would be putting the capture card in, just slotting that in behind that GPU with the riser cable. I believe I have a half height little thingo for it somewhere, but I've always used it in the full height mode. So yeah, they'll go in there somewhere. And yeah, so yeah, that should end up working nicely. And I can add in a bit more storage with they've got on this particular case these easy storage access things on the back. Plenty of USB ports on the Gigabyte motherboard that we used. So I'll be able to hook up all my podcasting equipment and microphones, audio gear all through the back of this. And yeah, we've got the AIO in the top, which is, it's got this nice mesh thing here. So even though a lot of the front panel is all glassed off so that you get the nice aesthetic look, there's quite a lot of mesh around the back here. Pretty much this whole back panel is mesh, which is allowing airflow in. The whole top panel is mesh as well, which is allowing airflow out. We've got the fan at the back here, and there's fans in this bottom section as well that are intaking upwards and being drawn in through either the back or underneath the case. So aside from the front panels, like this part, it's all very well meshified for the people that like the performance. All the filters and stuff are on the mesh. They all have filters. There's this tiny little grates and stuff in there. I'm not sure if it's removable. Let me just take a look. So yeah, if you have a look at the back of this, so this is like what all the panels are like, basically. It has got this very fine mesh in it. The mesh itself is built into this top panel by the looks of things, so you can't just easily take that out for cleaning, but you could clean this whole panel because there's no other elements to it really. So yeah, that just slots in nicely into the top there, and you get similar on the back as well with that that sort of design there. Nice understated RGB. You could go more all out with RGB, probably replace the rear fan with more RGB. Obviously you'd need a GPU that's got RGB fans, but you could put an LED light strip like along the bottom of the case there and things like that. But I don't necessarily need RGB for my build, so it works out nicely. The components, if you were wondering, you've joined the stream late, you've just joined for the end and you've seen this, as you will see on the screen here with some of these things. It is using the AMD Ryzen 5 7600 processor. We've put it on the Gigabyte Aorus B650M, the B650M Aorus Elite AX, which is a micro ATX board, one of their higher end models. We've got 32 gig of Team Group Delta RGB DDR5. We're also using their PCIe 5.0 SSD. This is the box for it. So 2 terabyte Z540 SSD. So nicely in there. And then we've got the Radeon RX 7800 XT, the gaming OC model from Gigabyte, which is installed there. We've got the Height Y60 case. And we got the, what else? The Gigabyte Aorus Waterforce 2 360 all-in-one liquid cooler, which is installed in the top there. I think it's ended up looking really nice. I actually quite like the little circular design on the CPU. I think that looks probably quite nice. And then we've got a Gigabyte 850 watt power supply as well. So those are all the components that are being used. The point of this build, for people that are wondering, well, first of all, it's an all AMD mid-range PC. So some of these components would make a lot of sense if you were building a mid-range sort of gaming system. The CPU, GPU, motherboard, memory, all those sorts of things end up working pretty nicely. For memory, you'd probably want slightly tighter timings. It depends on how much you are paying for the memory. You can often get slightly better timings for a little bit more. Then there's some things that are for aesthetic purposes, so like the Y60 case, the all-in-one liquid cooler, not necessary for a mid-range build, but it does improve the looks of it for the stream and also for around the place. So yeah, that's what those sort of components were designed for. The power supply obviously is a more budget end power supply. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. The only real thing that I probably wouldn't grab for a build like this is I would get a Team Group SSD. I use a lot of Team Group SSDs for builds and things, but the PCIe 5.0 drive, this is more designed for your sort of high-end professional workstations that need the extreme memory performance. It goes up to like 12.5 gigabytes per second read speeds. So for a podcast PC, for a gaming PC, you probably don't need 12.5 gigabytes per second, but they've got plenty of other options. And actually, I just bought the other day, I actually purchased a 4 terabyte Team Group SSD that was very affordable, cheap. It used TLC memory, so it wasn't QLC, so a little bit better performance there. I bought it was incredibly cheap, like crazy cheap. SSD prices are great at the moment. So yeah, that's all the components for this build. Why am I building it? This is also being used for the Hardware Unboxed podcast. We've got our dedicated podcast channel now. Steve and I have been doing weekly podcasts. And really, I've been hacking together a system really to be used for podcasting. I've been either repurposing my B-roll setup, which is more over this side of my workspace, which is where I would be showing monitor B-roll and things. I've been repurposing that, repurposing my game test system, which is used for actual work stuff as well, having to move that over to the podcast setup. It's been annoying and sort of adds time to the podcast process. So by having a dedicated PC now, I can mount this under the desk that I'm using, just chuck it right there on this movable desk setup that I've got. It's got everything in it, ready to go for podcasting, should work really nicely. So yeah, that's pretty much why this is being built, sort of the mid-range gaming PC kind of thing, all AMD kind of angle, and then being used for podcasting. So yeah, I think this build process, honestly, went pretty smoothly. The previous time I did a live stream just by myself on the channel was building my gaming PC. That was in a much bigger, more extravagant case. There was lots of different things going on with like the M.2 drives and things like that. This case is genuinely very easy to work with. Lots of space around the back for cable management and things like that. The vertical GPU mount was super easy, worked flawlessly to begin with. And yeah, I also liked there's this tray at the top that you can put the radiator in and mount all of that outside of the case. Then you just slot it in. That was super easy as well. The only question mark I would have is when you buy this case, you really would want it for its vertical mounting because it's only got half height traditional mounted methods. So this is mostly designed for people who are only utilizing it for a gaming or graphics build. I should be able to get my capture card in the back, but again, it's sort of a little bit more janky than another build that would have a bit more space around that way. And that explains why the case is also a little bit wider and shorter than you would see from a normal case, because the power supply is mounted vertically on the back, for example. So yes, the Y60 only allows for vertical GPU mounting, so you are forced to use the riser card. You could theoretically remove it and use a half-height card, so that would be sort of a low-end sort of thing. But yes, you pretty much would purchase this to use with the vertical riser mounting. So yeah, what do you think the 7900 XTX will drop to after the 4080 Super comes out? That's a good question. AMD, I think they recently released some promotional pricing for things like 7900 XT and those sort of things. They dropped that to $750. It's not an official price cut, it's an official promotional price though. I think the 7900 XTX, now I haven't seen any of our RTX 4080 Super numbers just yet, but assuming that the performance is pretty similar, then I think the AMD GPU would probably need to be like a $900 card at most, but it really depends on how the 4080 Super performs. Can you get cards at $1,000 US? But NVIDIA dropping the 4080 from $1,200 to effectively $1,000 for a similar level of performance is going to put a lot of pressure on the XTX. Because back when we did our initial review, the XTX and the 4080, even though the 4080 was $200 more expensive, we did think that the 4080 was worth purchasing. So yeah, it really would just depend on the exact how it all falls out in terms of its performance, its pricing, availability, and those sorts of things. But I think AMD is probably in for at least a $100 price cut for the XTX. Any chance that we're reviewing the AW3225QF? So that is the new 4K 32-inch QD-OLED monitor. I am interested in reviewing it. It is currently available in North America at the moment, but they are not available in Australia just yet. So yeah, not available to do just yet. So not available to review, and yeah. So we'll get onto that at some point when it's available. Probably stick around for a few more questions before wrapping the stream up. I'm sure you can hear that my voice is a little more scratchy than when I first started doing the build. When you hear live streaming for 2 hours just having to talk by yourself, it's a little hard on the voice, but it's always fun to get on and build some PCs like this. Love PC building, don't do as much of it as Steve does, so to getting in, grabbing a new PC, thanks to Gigabyte, AMD, Team Group, and Height for sending over the components for this. The last time I built in a budget case like that, it was more made, like it's made of aluminium cans. Yeah, can be a little bit like that when you get those lower cost products. What time is it here? It's currently 1 p.m, so in the afternoon on Monday, Australia time. So sort of the first thing to start the week off with a live stream build. It's always nice. Yeah. See, it's not, honestly, it's not too loud, I think, as far as computers go. Obviously, I've got the rear fan directly in my face, but even just with the default configuration, no fan tweaking or anything, I think it's a reasonable volume. I'd probably go and optimize it to be a little quieter. I like my quiet fan sort of experience there, but yeah. Must be hot today. No, it's actually not going to be very hot today well, I've heard that parts of Australia are going to be really hot, but here in Victoria it is not going to be super hot, so it should be nice. So building a PC early in the morning, if it was like 35 degrees outside right now, it would be very warm in here, very difficult to keep cool while trying to build a PC, because with the lights and stuff it can be a little bit full on with all that sort of thing. So yeah, Tuesday is going to be 44 degrees in Adelaide. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think here it's not going to, I think tomorrow, yeah, it's not going to quite get to 44 degrees, but it is going to be warmer. So yeah, it's nice to get it working right now. Any coil wine from the motherboard? No, not at the moment, but coil wine may be an issue. I'm not expecting it to be an issue, but usually if it's like a being used all out, that sort of thing, yeah, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside my house with the wind blowing. Yeah, not warm. So yeah, I think should be getting a few days above 30, which is nice. It's obviously winter it's winter in other parts of the world. It's summer here at the moment. And yeah, Australia was hitting over 50 degrees Celsius in recent days. Yeah, I think in the northern parts of Australia it was hitting the deserty parts outside of the very southern part of Victoria where we are. It was getting very, very warm, but here it was, yeah, pretty normal. So yeah, minus 20 degrees Celsius is not something we get here in Australia at all. I don't think there's anywhere that would get that. Even the mountains that have a bit of snow probably doesn't get to minus 20. So yeah, 0 degrees Celsius is like freezing cold for us. So yeah, gets nice and warm. Anyway, we get to final questions, then we'll stop the stream. Hopefully everyone's enjoyed it. If you've watched this as well as a video on demand type stream, hopefully you've enjoyed the build process, going through, figuring out the case, things that have been going nicely here. Everyone's on temperature chat in the chat, which I always appreciate. Love talking about the weather and temperature, things that have been going on. The worst summer I saw last year was 35 degrees Celsius. You have not experienced a hot summer if it's just 35 C. I think the record around here was 48 degrees Celsius, which you go outside and it's pretty hot. I'll give you that much. It's pretty hot when it's 48 outside. So other parts of the world are enjoying their winter in the snow. I've seen a lot of snow things going on. I'm very jealous because it has never snowed here. It probably will never snow here. So we don't experience that, but we do get nice hot summers, which are enjoyable for getting out, having fun. Yeah, Adelaide was 51 degrees at one point. So yeah. Yes, Melbourne can get very hot. The weather does fluctuate a fair bit. It is... yeah, a lot of fun when it gets warm in Melbourne. You get to go out and enjoy some things. So yeah. All right. Well, it is pretty much lunchtime here for me. So it's probably good to go out and grab a snack, come back, set this thing up for our podcasting later in the week. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, we do have a couple of reviews coming out on Hardware Unboxed in the next couple of days. So plenty of new content for GPUs that you'll be able to see very, very shortly. So if you're hanging out for GPU purchases, I would definitely wait until you see the results of those two reviews that are coming out this week, and then more reviews the following week. So the last 2 weeks of January should be packed full of reviews. And because this is a podcast PC, shout out to the Hardware Unboxed podcast and our separate channel that we've got there. If you want more of our thoughts on reviews and sort of follow up from user feedback, what people are saying, then we should be back with some podcast episodes dissecting the reviews and content that we've done on the channel, plus all the other stuff that we've been talking about in the podcast over the past couple of weeks. So that's it for this one. Thanks to everyone that has tuned in and enjoyed the stream as we've gone through and built a PC. Thanks to all the companies that support us for making this possible with Gigabyte and AMD, Team Group, Height. Thanks to everyone, and we will catch you in another live stream. Hopefully we're doing plenty more of these throughout the year, so really looking forward to it. Thanks everyone. We'll see you later.